the idea that we should worry, like we should care where Bitcoin maximalism comes from. So like, this idea that Vitalik Buterin made up Bitcoin maximalism term, one, is inaccurate. Uh, Two, even if Vitalik Buterin made up the word Bitcoin maximalism, he did popularize it. What is the problem with that? What does that have to do with anything? It's very common for cultures to reclaim words, and often cultures reclaim words that are expressly used as insults against them as a way to venerate their culture. This is something very common to most cultures. And if you think about another culture in the United States, it's probably very easy for you to think of examples like that. So I think Bitcoin maximalism is something that needs to be reclaimed a bit, because I do think that we should want to extend Bitcoin. We should want to do that. If we don't, then I don't understand. Then it sort of the whole thing becomes logically inconsistent.
Is it fair to say?
Uh-huh.
Is it fair to say that you're making the point that it needs to be more than just a reaction to a word that had a negative connotation? We have to define what it means.
Yeah,
So that we
100%.
can,
Because I think we want to be defined by our positive values and not our negative values, right?
mm,
And this is why I'm like I draw a very clear line. Like, I think it's okay for Bitcoin maximalists or the Bitcoin community to be antagonistic to the crypto world,
mhm.
and I think the crypto world should not resent that, because it is actually better for any type of cryptographic network that we're building here. It's better for it to be built on Bitcoin because it's more trust minimized. Like, it benefits all Bitcoin holders equally. There's no like opaque like foundations and third parties, whatever. So if it is better to build something on Bitcoin, then the goal of us as human beings who are aligned to the most positive outlook for humanity should be to build those things on Bitcoin, right? That's actually the best goal we should achieve. So in that case, Bitcoin maximalists are antagonistic to the crypto world. So I mean, one of the points here that I was thought would actually cause a lot more debate was, I think a Bitcoin maximalist has to have a commitment to crypto minimalism. You have to be doing something that aspires to reduce the amount of other cryptocurrencies and crypto assets that exist out there. Because if they continue to exist out there and continue to be useful to people, well, then they're going to be used, and therefore you are not maximally extending Bitcoin. You are just judging these things that people are using, and I think they don't understand why. Right? So your friend who trades NFTs, but probably doesn't really understand why you don't support what he's doing in any way. So again, I think that isolating the values helps us have the more difficult conversations. Like, it gets us away from this arbitrary groupthink where we're afraid to kind of say or do things because people won't like them. There's a social judgment. I think we've become very concerned about the social judgment because we don't have a clear idea of what our values are. So I tried to write down what I think those values are, and I would love for people to comment on them. And I've got a few like really thoughtful responses of like, hey, like, I think you might want to add this or subtract that. Because again, the more we can talk about the good that we can do for the group, the less we're going to be focused on like the negative stuff, right? And my argument here would become very focused on the negative stuff. We're very concerned about who has done the least amount of bad things and what those bad things that you shouldn't do are, and then calling out people for those bad things, and then shaming them for those bad things, and then making sure everyone knows that they've always done those bad things. And in the
Can
end,
you
we've done nothing good for Bitcoin, like
you
in that
said it
process.
you said it so succinctly earlier in the conversation. Just the distinction between like it's not enough to focus on the bad. We have to focus on. Can you just restate that?
Yeah. It's not enough to do the least bad. Like, we should want to do the most good. Like,
Mm,
there's a very distinct difference in this. Like,
yeah.
so like everyone here who's like who's calling me a whatever, like a statist or whatever, right? So a society where people are doing the least bad. Just think about this in your head. A society where people are doing the least bad. Okay, so what's coming in your head? These people are going to their house, they're going to their work, and they're coming home, and they're going to sleep, and they're getting up, and they're going to work, and they take their family out on Saturday, and they go to church on Sunday, and they go home, right? They've done the least bad. Okay, a society where people are doing the most good. Okay, what are you thinking about? Oh, maybe there's fundraisers for people, like maybe people are going out and adopting kids and puppies, and there's all these things, right? So which one of those is better, right? I would argue it's not the one where people are doing the least bad. The society where people are just doing the least bad is just the most homogeneous. And then if you believe in freedom, that just seems like a weird thing to also support. So
I think another way of framing that is it's kind of a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset. Like, are you focused on how to avoid punishment versus challenging yourself to embark on a path that basically helps you to maximize
so
your.
Winsome finally said something I agreed with. You can be a communist, capitalist, a drunk, pothead, or an asshole. Is that how you say it? Asshole with R.
Arsehole.
Yeah, no, I was trying to say
It's
it.
a British spelling.
Arse.
And I think it's asshole. You know, and use Bitcoin. I can still transact in Bitcoin with you because of the decentralized trust. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, agreed. But then you should want to get all those groups of people to use Bitcoin, right? Like that, in order to be a Bitcoin maximalist, you should want to encourage like all those people to use Bitcoin like that. So my point is here, it's like we have to have an attitude towards like advancing the cause and the mission. So anyway, just getting back to like the few points here, because I feel like there's a lot here and I rely a lot on like anecdotal examples, right? So, you know, I use the stapler one. It's like, it's very fine for you to, so Bitcoin is a tool. Sure, I own many tools. I have no social cultural relationship to those tools, right? Okay, so it's very clear that while Bitcoin is a tool, that tool needs something to advance the use of that tool. And so therefore Bitcoin has developed a culture, and that culture has kept that tool in really pristine condition. It's ensured that that tool could be broadly useful. You know, in every instance where the community made difficult decisions, I think it was in the best interest of the tool. But we need to convince more people to use the tool. We need to, and the tool needs to, again, if we want to limit the amount of other cryptocurrency networks that are out there, then we do need to improve the tool over time. You know, and my thing here is I think that like there exists this weird dichotomy where it's, you know, if we're not doing anything as a community to minimize, you know, if you're not a crypto minimalist, if you're not trying to minimize the amount of other cryptocurrencies that are out there, then you are enabling their use and you're allowing them to exist. And if they're always going to exist, then why would you cast judgment on them? They're just always going to exist. What's the use in hating them? They're just going to continue to be useful. So it is actually your action that matters. And if it is true that we can do everything that the cryptocurrencies are doing on Bitcoin over enough time and with enough reason and logic, then that should be the highest aspiration.